Hey everyone, I'm here today with my a story time video of my C-section, and I had a lot of people request this asking what the experience was like and if I had any advice or products that were really great, and so I wanted to share that with you. So if you guys don't know, I just had my second baby. We had a little girl on January 2nd, so she is almost 2 months old. She'll be 2 months old on my birthday. And it was a repeat C-section. So my son, who's 8 now, he was an emergency C-section. He was face up. They had me pushing for 2.5 hours, and there's just no way he was gonna come out. His head was too big and I'm too small. So where I live, they don't do VBACs, which is a vaginal birth after cesarean. You have to go to UC Davis. I've heard through the grapevine that sometimes you can find a way to have a vaginal birth after around here. I don't know. I was fine having a C-section. So I thought I'd just address that because I know that a lot of people were asking why I had a C-section and I should have a vaginal birth because, you know, it's better for the baby or whatever their reasoning is. I personally, as long as the baby is healthy and mama is fine, whether it's vaginal C-section, I don't feel like one or the other makes you any more or less of a mom. Creating human life, having a baby in and of itself, I think is absolutely amazing, and it's a miracle, and I'm just not for mom shaming and birth shaming or anything like that. So I had a C-section, and you know, I probably if given the choice, I probably would, if I could choose between a vaginal birth or a C-section, I'd probably do a C-section again. The light might go wonky because I'm in front of natural lighting and the sun keeps going behind the clouds. So I would probably choose a C-section, mainly because I had a great experience. Even though it was an emergency C-section, I had a great recovery, no complications, and so you know, I was fine having another C-section. Now it is a little bit different when it's an emergency C-section. You don't really have time to think about what's actually about to happen. With a scheduled, it's nice because you know, okay, my baby's gonna come on this day, unless of course they decide to come earlier, but they're gonna come on this day and I know what, you know, when she's gonna be born, and I kind of know what's gonna happen. But I get very queasy, I have a very weak stomach, and so as it got closer, I started to get more and more freaked out about having a C-section and being cut open, and I don't know, I had 9 months to think about the procedure, where before I had 9 seconds. Leading up to the C-section, I started getting a little nervous, and it was kind of weird just walking into the hospital and being all right, I'm here for a C-section, I'm not having any contractions, I'm just here to have my baby. And so we walked in, my C-section was scheduled at 3, we had to be there at noon. We went in, they got me into a room, I got into my gown, they got my IV, you know, got me checked in, got my IV, and we just kind of waited, and they were pretty on time. A lot of people said that, you know, oh, it's probably gonna be late. Actually, they were pretty on time. I think I walked into the operating room at 3:07 or something like that. So that is the other thing. You walk yourself into the operating room, which was so scary. And Ted didn't get to go with me. So he got to come in right before they did the C-section, but the first half I was by myself. So I have to walk my little self in my gown, and with my IV, walk myself into the C-section operating room, which was really scary. It was very, you know, bright and sterile. They had music playing, and that's when I started panicking because I was like, Ted's not here. I got really scared. Spinal block, yeah. And I just thinking about the needle was freaking me out. So I started crying. I'm hunched over a nurse, you're on the bed, hunched over a nurse. Luckily, the anesthesiologist that we had was actually at my nephew's birthday party. And he was so when are you due? And I told him, and he told me he was an anesthesiologist. And then everybody there was he's the best, you need to request him. So I requested him. And I guess I forgot, because I was so tired by the time the C-section with Ethan, that how naked you really are. And so here's this guy who is friends with my sister-in-law and all their friends, and I requested him because they said he's the best, but now here I am pretty much naked on this operating table, which I after the fact kind of was embarrassed about, but during it I could really care less. So I was hunched over the nurse crying, and she's being really encouraging, and they had music playing, and then this song, I'll Be by Edwin McCain, comes on. It used to be my favorite song. I remember the first time I heard it, we lived in Utah. I was watching Days of Our Lives, which was my soap opera for years. I used to watch it with my mom all the time. And Belle and Sean, if you guys watch Days of Our Lives, you're gonna like blast from the past. Belle and Sean were kissing on like a beach or something, and I'll Be by Edwin McCain came on. And I just loved that song, and I loved it so much that it was the song that I walked down the aisle to with Ethan's dad. So as I'm getting the spinal block and I'm about to have my baby, that song comes on, and I thought, are you freaking kidding me right now? Because that song has come on at all the most inopportune times. It came on in the limo right after Ted proposed. It came on the radio when we were applying for our marriage certificate. And I don't know if it's because it's usually on like soft rock radio stations, and that's often what's played in like offices and that kind of stuff. And so now here it is playing when I'm about to have Olivia. So I'm crying, the song comes on, I kind of like start laughing, and I'm like, hey, and everyone in there is singing it. I'll be your crying child. You know, I'm not a good singer, but you know the song. So they start singing it, and I'm like, this might sound really ridiculous, but do you think you could change the station? Because they're like, oh yeah, we hate this song. It's a horrible song. I'm like, well, no, it's a great song, but it's a song I walked down the aisle to when I married my ex-husband. So it just seems a little inappropriate to be playing that right now. So they all started laughing. We changed the station, and I was just like, of course that song would come on. Like, what is the chances that that's gonna happen? So it came on, and it made me laugh, and at the same time I was like, seriously, why? So I got the spinal block, and that kind of like it was almost like, why are you playing right now? But also a little bit of like a blessing, because I was like really starting to like freak out. So they do the spinal block, and then they lay you on the bed, and I could start to feel like my legs getting heavy, and then I could start to feel that I couldn't feel my legs, and I tried to wiggle my toes and I couldn't, and it was really starting to freak me out. When I had the epidural, like you could still kind of move a little bit. Everything just felt super heavy, and I felt paralyzed, and it was really creepy. So you're lying down, and your arms are stretched out like this, and I remember they were like scrubbing my stomach with something, like a brush, like I guess sanitizing your tummy or whatever. There was so much stuff happening. They put in a catheter, and what else happened? Then they put up the blue sheet, and then the doctor came in, and Ted got to come in, and I just kind of started freaking out. Have a C-section. Don't be alarmed when you smell burnt flesh, because you will smell it. And I don't know if they use like a laser to cut you open. It sounded like a laser, and then it smelled like burning flesh. Kind of gross. But that's the realistic. It's what happened. And it was it was never painful, because it's not like sharp pain. It's a lot of pressure. So it does kind of feel like tugging and pulling, and like a lot of action happened on your stomach. It's like tugging and pulling, but not painful, but uncomfortable, and a lot of pressure. That's the best way to describe it, is a lot of pressure. And then it's the weirdest feeling, because you could feel when they take her out. Like, it's almost like a release feeling. And then there's like a lot of pressure and stuff after. But they took her out, and they like held her. They brought her like to the side so I could see her. And I'm like, she's so cute. And then I could hear her crying, and they like were wiping her off.
Purple line, if you left that purple line, you'd be good.
Good job, Olivia. You're doing so good.
I can hear your name, Olivia. And then they put her on my chest. And with Ethan, they put him on my chest for maybe 2 minutes, and then they took him to the nursery where they washed him and did everything, and Ethan's dad went with him, so I was by myself, which I thought was gonna happen, but that was not the case. They've changed it in 8 years, which I'm so thankful for. So they put her on my chest, and I got to hold her the whole time that they were putting everything back together and sewing me up, which was so great, because it took my mind off of what was happening, and I just kept looking at her and just like, you're so beautiful, you're so beautiful. And it was just, getting emotional here. She was just so cute and calm, like she wasn't screaming, she was just staring right at me, and I got to hold her the whole time. And then they took her, I went into recovery and they brought her in, and I got to immediately breastfeed and she do skin to skin, and she latched, and I got to watch them give her bath, which was so great because I missed all of that with Ethan. She latched great, and then they moved us in. We're in recovery for about an hour. Now, I don't remember this with Ethan, and I'm sure it happened. I just was probably so out of it at that point. But they push on your stomach so hard. I feel like I'm overly bright now because the sun is being crazy. So luckily it's not a tutorial. So they push on your tummy really hard. That was probably the worst out of everything. Because they want to make sure that the incision is not oozing out. They want to make sure it's fully sealed, which with Ethan, I had giant staples, metal staples that they had to take out before I left. With this one, I had a glue. So I think I had dissolvable stitches and glue over it. And then they push to make sure you're not clotting. So whatever blood's coming out your, vagina, that it's not clots or something like that. So they did that about 6 times in an hour, and it was awful. It's the worst part of all of it. Then they brought me into my room, and I got to have Olivia in there, and we luckily got a doubles room, so Ted had his own bed, which was so nice, and our family came and saw us, and then
Don't smash your head into me. This is Ethan. Hey, look at the camera, Olivia.
Oh my God.
Look at. It's okay, Olivia. Welcome back, baby. In the treetop. I love you, and you are the best. You are really cute, and I love you. I love you.
Oh, that makes her calm down. She likes that when you sing to her.
Olivia, I love you.
That night, so I had her at 3:27, 11 p.m. My night nurse came in and she said, all right, let's get to walking. Let's take your catheter out. And I was like, wait, what? Because with Ethan, it was over 24 hours before they had me up and walking. Here it was between 6 and 7 hours they had me up walking. They took the catheter out, they took my IV, like unclipped my IV, and I just had, it in my hand. And she had me get up and start walking. And so I think that is how I recovered so well, is because I was up walking very early. It's very weird when you try to go pee for the first couple times after you have like your catheter out and after you have a block, because I like sat on the toilet for 20 minutes trying to pee, and it was like I was trying mentally to go pee, but my body, like I could not have that mind muscle connection to actually pee. It was the weirdest thing. And I know a lot of this seems like TMI, but I'm telling you this because nobody talks about this stuff. And I, like, 1, didn't remember from my first C-section, and 2, I've never heard anyone talk about this kind of stuff. And it kind of freaked me out a little bit because I was like sitting there trying to pee, finally peed. And, even if you have a C-section, you're gonna bleed a lot. I bled for 2 weeks, and then it stopped, and then for 5 days, and then it came back. And so I bled all the way up till about 4.5, 5 weeks. Maybe 5, closer to 5 weeks I was bleeding. Of course it like tapers off and it's not as heavy, but expect to bleed anywhere from like 4 to 6 weeks. And I brought my Depends, and I'm so happy I did because I cannot stand the big old pad. Wearing the Depends was so much more comfortable. It wasn't bulky. It was really nice. So I'm really glad I brought those because a lot of people love the netted underwear and the giant pads. I hated it. And so I wore the Depends, and it just felt so much better. And so I was there, had her Wednesday. I got to go home on Friday. Every couple hours I'd get up and kind of walk. They did, before I was up and walking, gave me 2 doses of Norco for the pain, but on an empty stomach, and I got extremely sick, was throwing up like 4 or 5 times. It was so painful and so awful. And yeah, it was really bad. My recovery experience, I was pretty sore for a while. My incision was numb for quite a while. I remember my incision being numb for a really long time with Ethan. This go around, it was numb for about 3 weeks, and then it was really sore. Where I was mostly sore was actually my inner incision, so about 2 inches up from my normal incision, my outer incision, 2 inches up from that. my inner incision, that was really sore for probably 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks. I couldn't wear anything that would press on that area, and it's fine now, and my incision is fine now. I'm 8 weeks postpartum, but for a while it was very, very tender. Jeans hurt. Even if they weren't hurting my C-section scar, they were hurting that inner scar. So be prepared to have like not only an incision kind of hurt, but also the inner incision, which is about 2 or 3 inches up, probably about 2 to 3 fingers up from that inside will be really sore. Because I totally forgot about that with Ethan as well. I was really scared to go poop, but after I did, it was fine. It wasn't as bad as I thought. I think the thought of it is far more terrifying than actually doing it. So take your stool softeners because it is kind of scary, but it's not that bad. I did get one of those like girdle things, or the wraps, waist trainer wraps. I wore that a couple times. I found that it actually irritated my scar a little bit. The only time I could wear is if I was standing up, but if I sat down, the bottom part of it kind of dug into either my inner scar or my outer scar, and it was very uncomfortable. So I didn't really wear that all that often. Really about it for my C-section experience. It wasn't that bad. We plan to have at least one more baby, so I know now what to expect. It had been so long since I had Ethan that I really forgot about a lot of the different things. If you have a vaginal birth, a lot of people talk about like intense stomach cramping after birth. I didn't have that, probably because I was still pretty numb and I was on so many painkillers, so you don't really feel that. But I mean, when they're kneading on your stomach and pushing on it really hard to make sure, you know, you're not clotting and that your scar is like fully sealed, that is really, really painful. I recommend taking your pain meds. That will be on top of your pain meds. Don't wait till you're hurting. They did send me home with Norco and ibuprofen. I took the Norco for about 2 days after I got home, and then I was strictly on ibuprofen. I don't like taking medication, so I wanted to be like off of any painkillers as quickly as possible, but I also knew that I still needed something so that I wasn't like dying in pain all day long. But that was my C-section story. That was my experience. We have a beautiful baby girl, and it really isn't that bad. It was so great. Just like Ethan got to be there right after she was born. He was the first one that held her besides Ted and I, and he started crying, holding her, and he was just like, I just don't know if it's because I'm so happy or if it's because she's so cute, but he's so in love with her. It's so adorable. He sings to her all the time. She's such a sweet baby. I'll talk more about her in the her 2-month update, because I had like meet my baby / 2-month update, because I didn't do a meet my baby or a 1-month update. But that was my C-section story. Bring your Depends. You'll really love them even if you don't have a C-section. The Depends are so much more comfortable to be sitting in than pads and the netted underwear. And yeah, it was a wild ride. It's crazy to believe that it happened 2 months ago. But I hope that if you're having a C-section, this was helpful on kind of what to expect. It's not as scary as it sounds. You can, when you get a C-section, I think they'll hold a mirror up so you can see them take the baby out. I wasn't interested in doing that. Like I said, I have a weak stomach. It probably would have freaked me out. So I don't think I would have been able to handle seeing them pull her out of me. Yeah, I don't know if I'd have been able to do that. So some people do that and handle that kind of stuff well. I don't handle blood. I can't even put contacts in my own eye because it grosses me out. So I don't do good with blood or guts or anything like that. So yeah, I couldn't do that. So yeah, anywho, that was my C-section story. I hope if you are getting a C-section or thinking about it, this kind of gave you some things to be aware of or things to be prepared for. I was cleared to work out and everything after 4 weeks, but my C-section scar was still the outer scar was still sore till about 5 or 6 weeks. Now, like I said, 8 weeks postpartum, it's not sore anymore. I feel great. I can wear jeans or tighter clothing and it doesn't irritate my inner or my outer scar. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching. If you've had a C-section, tell me, did you have a good experience, bad experience? Let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.